One winter morning in 1942, a Pennsylvania dentist looked at Carlsbad Caverns, watched thousands of Mexican free-tailed bats pour out of the dark, and thought America had found a secret weapon. Not radar, not rockets, bats. Tiny sleeping bats, each carrying a timed incendiary, dropped over Japan from a casing that would open in midair. The idea came from Lytle S. Adams, who was at Carlsbad after Pearl Harbor. He knew wooden cities in Japan could burn if sparks landed in enough attics at once, and he knew bats could crawl into impossible hiding places. So he wrote the White House with a plan that sounds like a fever dream and still made it through the door. The bat bomb would chill live bats into hibernation, tuck them into a perforated canister, and strap a tiny delayed incendiary to each animal. Then it would drop the whole contraption from altitude. A parachute slowed the shell. Warm air woke the cargo. At about 1,000 feet, the casing opened, and more than 1,000 bats were supposed to scatter across rooftops, barns, temples, factories, and houses before the timers lit. The theory was awful, elegant, and brutally literal. One bomber drops one canister, and the city doesn't get one explosion. It gets 1,000 small fires starting where no firefighter can find them. Dry note. This wasn't a cartoon villain's notebook. Roosevelt's Circle actually sent the proposal onward because the fire calculation was disturbing. That's the joke and the horror. The bats weren't metaphorical. The government tried to make them ordnance. Research moved through the war machine under the name Project X-Ray. The team collected bats from Carlsbad Caverns, packed them into trays, tested casings, and experimented with tiny H2 incendiary units light enough for a small bat. The weapon needed a delicate chain to work. Cold bats had to stay asleep. The casing had to survive the drop. The parachute had to slow it. The shell had to open. The bats had to wake up. Then the unstable part happened. They had to choose the enemy's buildings instead of America's test range. That is where the story becomes almost too perfect. In May 1943, during tests near Carlsbad, some armed bats warmed early, escaped, and did exactly what the plan promised. They roosted where they were unwelcome. A control tower and other base structures caught fire while personnel watched the experiment burn its own rehearsal stage. The weapon had proved it could start hidden fires. Unfortunately, it had proved that on the wrong side of the ocean. The Navy took over, then Marines pushed it further. Engineers kept chasing a biological firestorm, canisters with hundreds of compartments, parachute timing, cooling, bat handling, bombers carrying sleepy animals as classified ammunition. Reports put spending in the millions before the project, lost to a faster weapon with a shorter management chain, the atomic bomb. Project X-Ray was canceled before combat. No Japanese city was attacked by incendiary bats. But the idea reveals wartime imagination chasing more than bigger explosions. Officials hunted delivery systems that turned living habits into strategy. A bat wanting a dark roof became a targeting system. A cave animal became a weapon designer solution to urban fire spread. The ugly truth is that the plan wasn't stupid in the simple way. It failed because it was smart about one thing and reckless about everything around it. Adams knew how bats roosted. The testers understood Japanese urban fire risk. What they couldn't tame was the living middle of the machine. Animals wake early. Fuses keep counting. Wind moves. Doors get left open. A weapon that depends on thousands of tiny decisions by terrified animals is not a precision strike. Pure chaos with a purchase order. So the bat bomb ends as both absurd comedy and dark warning. The canister, the fire photo, and the official records don't tell a myth about a crazy dentist nobody listened to. They show a real wartime bureaucracy willing to pick up a wild idea, fund it, test it, burn its own base, and only then admit that a bomb full of bats might be a little too alive to command. Wry footnote. Thanks for watching. Somewhere in a file drawer, Project X-Ray is probably still trying to explain that the weapon technically worked. I'll see you next time, preferably with a plan that does not require tiny mammals to read the mission brief.